So how did this partnership with 50 Cent come about?
Well, the book was very popular with rappers, as I said, because of the nature of the music industry. And he reached out to me. He wanted to meet me because the 48 Laws of Power was sort of his Bible, as he expressed it. So I met him in New York, kind of in the back room of this steakhouse. It was sort of like something straight out of The Godfather. I was kind of the one white guy amongst his whole group there. I was a little bit intimidated, to be honest. I didn't know what to expect because he has this reputation. Ended up, he was really nice and really interesting, actually a very kind of sweet guy, not what you expect. And I just finished writing my book on warfare and strategy, which is kind of my version of Sun Tzu's Art of War, how to strategize in conflicts, sort of like what you're talking about. And he has a very strategic mind. And we kind of had a really nice connection. And I thought, so much in our culture is creating these stupid kind of divisions and walls. Like you're in academia, you only write academic books. You're a popular person, you only write popular books. You come from this community, you come from that community, and you never communicate. And I thought it would be very interesting to write a book coming from two opposite backgrounds. Me, middle-class Jewish boy from Los Angeles, and him from Southside Queens. Something interesting could happen from a collaboration. There's not enough of that in our culture, I believe, because even though our circumstances were very different, our minds were very similar. We were thinking on a similar plane that kind of transcended these sort of superficial differences. So I spent time with him, and I was trying to figure out what is the essence of his power, what makes him such a compelling figure and made him not one of those people in Southside Queens who ended up kind of spiraling downward, ending up in prison. What saved him? And I determined that the quality he had was this kind of fearlessness. And it isn't the kind of fearlessness where you go beating people up or something. It's kind of an inner strength. He had been shot when he was like 20 years old, like 9 bullets right there through a car window, one of the bullets lodged in his mouth. And he survived miraculously. And it gave him this kind of calmness, like, I have nothing to fear. I almost died. Bring it on. I don't really care. And so I observed him in meetings. I observed that kind of calmness and how he could take over a meeting, not by being super aggressive, but just by having this kind of dominant persona. And I thought that there's tremendous power in this fearlessness, not being afraid to be different, not being afraid to have conflict and confrontation, not being afraid of death itself, not being afraid of the reality of your situation, on and on. So the book that we formed together was kind of a meditation on 10 forms of fearlessness. And I found, I thought that I was a relatively fearless person, which in some ways I am. I seem agreeable, but I'm actually in some ways a little bit bold and adventurous. But compared to him, I realized, no, I'm actually riddled with fears. And just being around him and kind of writing the book helped me a lot in my, kind of overcome some of my own limits and some of my own fears. So that's where that book came
it's
out.
Nice to have a model like that really close by, right? To contrast yourself with. You can learn a lot from. So do you think that fearlessness that you saw in him, you think part of that was a consequence of that brush with death? How much of that do you think was temperamental too in him?
Well, there's a kind of a reckless fearlessness that a lot of people from the hood have, which doesn't really serve them very well, and it gets them in a lot of trouble, right? He has a very kind of strategic, under control.
Yeah.
But someone like 50 Cent, he's very comfortable with himself. He knows who he is. He knows where he came from. His mother was a hustler on the streets, so he knew the limits of the game. And I don't know, I think there is maybe a slight genetic component to it. I can't really put my finger on it, why he was able to have this kind of self-control where other people didn't.
Well, that dimension, neuroticism, if you're in a rough environment and you're low in neuroticism, that's pretty damn helpful, because imagine that what neuroticism is, unit of psychophysiological upset caused per unit of stress.
Yeah.
And or unit of danger. And some people overreact and some people underreact. Sometimes the overreaction saves your life. Sometimes the underreaction gets you killed. So it's not like there's a clear answer. So there's variability there. Some people are much more calm, not volatile. They don't withdraw temperamentally. And that's a more masculine temperament, by the way.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you're raised in a really rough environment and you happen to be emotionally stable, that's the opposite of neurotic, let's say, then you're just not going to be as affected by it. And that can be a real blessing.